Good. Hello. I'm really glad to be here. My first time in Korea. Really excited. And I'm also honored to be asked to hold this presentation. I have to admit, I mean, climate change is not really my topic, but still, I mean, it's something, like you said, it's something that we are challenged with, or that we see like every day as a coffee buyer, and I'll try to make a presentation more from a practical point of view. Just a little bit about my background, because I think it's relevant for what I'm going to say. I've been working 10 years as a quality buyer in very close relation to producers. So up till last year, I worked for a specialty roaster in Norway, and last year I started or founded this company that are doing green beans into Europe, mainly for spot sales. But the thing is that we are taking on that same philosophy, even trying to develop it into kind of a more specific buying philosophy. I think the challenge of a coffee farmer and a coffee buyer really goes hand in hand. Whatever affects the producer in terms of challenges will be something I have to adapt to or relate to as a buyer. So in that sense, for me it's a lot of philosophy in terms of how you work as a grower on the ground, as a grower and a buyer on the ground. So I'll get straight to it. My presentation will be a little divided. I'll try to just go through the kind of practical challenges that the producers are facing, and then I'll try to link it up with what we can actually do or what kind of impact we have as buyers. And in the end, I will just finish off talking a little bit more about specific buying practices we have as a company. What we see in the last few years, not few years, I mean the last years, and what all producers are kind of facing these days is increased temperatures. There is a lot of hurricanes, hard winds, there is excessive rains and very unpredictable rain patterns, and there is droughts. You've probably all heard about La Nina, the hurricane stand that was kind of going on in Central America some years ago. It's also like it seems like the droughts are longer, and when the rain comes, it's heavier. Same with the winds. So, in practical terms, there is a lot of things that are related to these issues, and talking about increased temperatures. In my opinion, it really decreases, or it has the potential of heavily decreasing the crop quality. What is happening is that we have faster maturation. The beans are growing, but they don't have the density, and they will also be kind of missing the flavor intensity that we are looking for as specialty buyers. And I've seen many examples of that. I mean, it's not like I've seen it's changed from one year to the other, but still, there are places, I'll get a little more back to the reasons why, but there are places where we kind of earlier expected kind of high density, great flavors, and it's really hard to find now. The beans can look great, but unfortunately the flavors are not there. What producers are facing as well is more pests and diseases in areas where they previously haven't had those issues. And this again, to fight those those challenges, it can be a costly process for the producers. And eventually it can also end up in producers just, they are not really able to fight it, and they will change crops and grow different agricultural products. This again has to be supported by us as buyers. There's also some issues in regards to pollination. The numbers of wild bees are decreasing. I'm not an expert on bees, but what I read, I also have a friend actually that are kind of working on this topic. But from what I understand, it's just like small increases in temperature will affect the bees' ability to fly, and they're more or less, in some areas they're already more or less extincted. They're not really present anymore at the same level as they should be. Some coffee plants are self-pollinating, but still there's a lot of plants that need bees and stuff to pollinate. So I have seen projects with farmers that are actually working actively on increasing the number of bees in their local environment. So things can be done still. And then you have shift of growing areas. There's a lot of places where they previously were able to grow quality coffees, where it's now too hot to get to the level to produce a sustainable, or to make a sustainable business out of coffee growing. So what we're seeing is that they're going up to higher altitudes, but that again can lead to a lot of challenges. We all know that picking in really steep hillsides can be difficult, it can be challenging, it can also be very costly. In terms of inputs and fertilizer, you will have issues, or you have to adapt and change your way of implementing those things. I think, like in Brazil, for instance, if they're moving up to a higher level, they also have problems with frost. So there's a number of issues they have to deal with in higher altitudes that I don't have in lower altitudes. But me as a buyer, I love high altitude coffees, but still I see it's kind of, you have to support the changes they are facing to be able to grow coffee in some of those climates. This is an example of what happened after, I think that was after Hurricane Stan in Salvador. These were some producers I worked with, and if you look at the pictures, it's pretty heavily affected. And this guy on the right, he's a small farmer. He has some hectares of land. He's been producing great coffees, but of course, 90% of his trees look like this. It's really hard to deal with. What we did actually in that case, when we've been doing it a couple of times when they had those issues, is that we actually, because we have like really close relationships, we are going in and we can still support these producers. I remember at one point there was like a producer who normally would produce 50, 60, 70 bags of great quality. They were only able to produce 3 bags a year because we were facing issues like this. And what we did, we actually bought those 3 bags at an insanely high price. But that was basically just to keep this guy going so he didn't go bankrupt. And afterwards, again, we got that in return because that's kind of even creating a closer relationship. And he was, let's say, forever thankful. That said, it's not about giving aid. It's more about having, a sustainable, long-lasting relationship where you kind of help each other to be able to get your supply over time of great quality coffee. Going into the rains, it creates a lot of issues as well. The first thing is that you more and more see off-season flowering, which create, I mean, it's stressing the plants because they're going out of their normal patterns and normal cycles. It's really challenging in terms of picking. It's also challenging in terms of farming cycle and management cycles due to when to add fertilizer and things like that. You have less uniform ripening and again flowerings at the same time as you're doing pickings. And basically it can decrease the income for a farmer. First of all, because it doesn't have the volumes he should have or expect to have or are budgeting on during the main season. Second, I mean, it's also very, very labor dense. When you look at a tree like this, in areas like where they're maturing so unevenly, maybe you have to keep your tree 3, 4, 5 times if you're still going for that high quality level. Again, this is from a washing station in Rwanda, and the last few years when I've been there, they had like huge issues with rain during drying season. Directly affects the quality, but again, it's not only actually the the practical things on the washing station. This is a washing station. You see the building is where they're processing the coffee, and the tables you see is where they're drying the coffee. And it can take, normally it will take in those climates could be 12, 13, 14, 15 days, and what we see now is that it takes like more than 20 days to dry coffee because they have too much rain during the season. But it's also again about inputs, fertilizer, when to implement, when you have those patterns that are unpredictable according to your kind of normal farming cycle. And you have soil erosion. You have a lot of land that used to be fertile, where there's now it's really hard to go in and do crops unless you start to treat the soil again to kind of retrieve what it takes to grow a sustainable quality crop in those fields. When it comes to crop, this is I spent a lot of time in Africa last year, and there was a lot of issues, but I think the worst was in Tanzania, where they are really struggling with enough water they need irrigation systems to be able to grow coffee there. They basically don't have water capacity right now. So they try to build ponds like this. It's like hundreds of thousands of liters of water necessary to be able to grow coffee there now. And there's actually other issues, a little on the side, but this was like very close to the Ngorongoro crater, and because the droughts and things, they also have animals like elephants, buffaloes coming in and actually digging up the water pipes they have. So it's not only the direct lack of water, but it can also create a lot of other problems and issues for farmers. And actually some of the workers got killed for that reason as well. So it can be very complex. It's not only about direct irrigation and stuff like that. Increased irrigation costs. This is from Brazil, but from what I know, they're looking in areas in Colombia, even in Costa Rica. If they're going to maintain their crops, they have to go in and do irrigation. Sorry, I can try to. That's it. And then we have a lot of, this is a result of droughts when it was supposed to be rain. You have dieback of trees, you have defoliation of coffee trees, increased evaporation that directly affects not only the quality but actually the crop you're getting. So, this like an introduction about what the producers are facing. So the question is, do we have an impact as buyers? I really think we do. Keep on this one. No, I think we have a huge impact as buyers. Small or big, I know there will be different takes, different approaches, but I can only speak for myself. We're kind of a small buyer working on limited volume, but still I think the philosophy can be very much the same, no matter what kind of level you're at. And maybe sometimes I realize I'm a little naive, but I think it's good to be naive, because I think being too cynical about these issues doesn't really help. So, but there is for sure, in my opinion, a lot we can do as buyers, and whatever we try to, whatever we communicate as a group to producers, it can have a lot of impact. So I think for us it's about having a buying philosophy, and we are working on a really, really high quality level. Number one criteria is cup quality, but still, for me it's not about running around trying to find 10 bags there that are great, another 10 bags there that are great, work with one producer 1 year, another producer another year. It's much more sustainable and much more important for us to try to build relations long-term with the producers, and that can be through organizations. Like in Africa, we have a lot of organizations we can work through and support. In Central America, we work with larger producers that are able to do microlots on a broad scale, and they have a lot of they're implementing systems because they really see the relation between quality and environmental responsibility. Unfortunately, there is, I'm not saying that there is no protocols in coffee production, but if you compare coffee to other, let's say, products, there is still, in my opinion, a lack of quality control, a lack of protocols. But fortunately, we see that more and more, especially quality buyers, they're implementing good systems to keep track on their practices, so to speak. Another thing that is really increasing is eco-hoppers. And from what I've read, I think it's like it takes in traditional washing and traditional fermentation, it takes like in total 140 liters per cup of coffee. And we're facing we're going towards lack of water, and the increased number of eco-hoppers around the world is, to me, really a positive trend. Water treatment systems, another thing that is really crucial. You have, I'll get back to that later. You have different methods. It could be big ponds for larger producers. It can be different kinds of grass for small-scale producers. Again, it's a lot about the relationship. So we think that try to work long-term with producers is also about doing contracting. You can work with an African wet mill. You can contract the coffee early. They can get finance from root capital, or we do long-term contracting with buyers like 3 years on fixed prices, so they can actually budget their increase of cost and still be able to produce quality at a high sustainable level. Build relations to producers, secure quality and supply. And last but not least, encourage, when we are investing in the coffee, when we are paying great premiums, we expect the producers to follow up by investing in their farms to meet both the quality standards we demand, but also, you know, the challenges they're facing, thinking more long term. I mean, the climate issue is addressing two different things. I mean, it's about what the next generations of quality producers have to do to still be able to produce coffee at that level. But it's also about, like I said earlier, just like getting secure supply of high quality, and it's really a partnership. It's not aid. When we are paying premiums, we don't do that for aid. We do that to make sure that we can buy consistent quality over time. What is really crucial, again, is what's happening at farm level. Because, I mean, it's not about reverse what's already been going on, but I think we can reduce some of the issues going into the future. And I think we're all responsible throughout the chain. I mean, the growers, the producers, wet millers, us as buyers, roasters, retailers, whatever. But I think that the biggest number is the farmers, and it's really important to start there in terms of mitigation. And but still, again, that has to be supported by the rest of the industry. These are examples of what helps. Growing shade trees with increased temperature, with increased evaporation, it's really important. And I think a lot of the producers we work with by default is actually doing shade trees, but that's because we are looking for top quality, and very often, it depends on where you are, not everywhere, but in climates like this, we really see that it comes with a quality to begin with. But that said, I mean, we are working with some producers large scale, and we want them to, you know, we are encouraging them to take those investments. They're also looking at different kind of shade trees. They're experimenting with shade trees and different kind of fertilizer. Moving into that direction is something we really work close on with the producers. This is typically training for farmers in Rwanda, where they learn how to mulch. This is basic stuff, but it's still things that have to be implemented on the ground. As mentioned earlier, this is very often done by organizations that are supporting smallholders. In Kenya, we work with organizations that are really encouraging the farmer to plant through grass through the rows of coffee, again, so they can have easy access to mulching. This is back to the washing stations. On the left there, this is from Ethiopia. And there's like big projects in Western Ethiopia now where they're actually setting up a lot of new boats. And they're all based on eco-hoppers that are saving a lot of water. And what we're seeing is that the quality coming out of that is amazing. So again, it's actually, I see that all the things that have to be implemented, it's not only to work on the environmental issues, it really helps for quality as well, which I think is great. This is a typical water treatment system for a larger scale producer. That said, you can do this on small scale, and in Ethiopia, if we're going back to that picture here, I've seen a lot of examples of from that eco-hopper to the left there, and the glass fiber tanks where they do the stocking. They take the coffee just through, like, they're digging ditches and they plant vetiver grass. And the coffee, the wastewater is really pretty clean when it's coming out, so it doesn't have to be that complicated. We're working a lot on drying experiments. So far, it's mainly been in Central America, going from drying on patios, because with the sun, the temperature nowadays, in my opinion, it really affects the cup quality. And really the shelf life of the coffee. Coffees are fading way too fast, and we've seen that if we can work on more controlled drying systems where they're not exposed for that much sun, maybe more airflow, raised beds, things like that, we really increase the shelf life as well as we can increase the efficiency of drying for the producers. So, to our buying practices. I mean, what kind of, actually when I started to work on this presentation, I didn't really know, I wasn't like 100% sure what take I want to do on it, because should it be more, you know, pick out numbers, statistics, things like that, but then I decided just to look at it from a practical point of view. And you know, I went through all these things that I looked at what we were actually doing as a buyer, and I saw that we are working on a very sustainable level, even if we haven't, I mean, we're buying coffee for the quality, that's the number one thing. But still, when you look at the producers we work with, they are already on a pretty high level in terms of meeting those challenges, because I think basically it just goes hand in hand. When you have that awareness from the producer side, that's when you're able to actually produce better coffees. So I think like 70 or 80 of our coffees are already from, 80% of our coffees are already from eco-bulkers. All the coffees we buy in Africa, we work through organizations, or they are supplied or supported by organizations that are putting in staff on the ground to work on farmer trainings and mitigations. That's like TechnoServe in Ethiopia, we're working with CMS in Kenya, we are working with DIA in Burundi, and they're all kind of putting in a lot of effort. The producers we work with in Central America are kind of larger scale producers, like I said, producing great micro lots, but they still have, you know, they're still having that progressive approach because they want to sustain throughout the years. And what we do is like we demand full traceability and transparency with everything we do, because we think that is crucial to both to, you know, go back and look at what's happening when the quality doesn't meet the standards, but it's also the only way to go into the future, especially with lot separation and things like that. And last but not least, we are very active in producing countries. We are following up and create these close relations, because I think the farmers, to be able to invest and take on the challenge, they really need the support from the buyers, knowing that they will be able to sell that coffee year after year, no matter if the prices are down to 150 per pound. When I work with producers like this, I will still be able to pay them everything from, you know, $3 to $5 per pound fixed prices, because I know the cost of production is at the level. So if I don't support that, there is no incentive for them to go on. Yeah. Basically, I think that is it. And we can open for questions. Thank you.
네, 혹시 질문 있으세요? 질문을 바로 받고 이렇게. 네. 마이크 좀 부탁드립니다.
Mr. Morten, how do you improve the transparency in sourcing?
Again, please.
How do you improve the transparency in sourcing?
That really depends on where you are working and at what level you're thinking of. But for us as a company, we do have a personal relation to all the producers we work with. So what we do is that we are on site, and we are following up the products and the producers very close. And we don't buy coffee from producers that don't have a lot of traceability, for instance. We have to know that this coffee is from this area, followed by a tag, for instance, on the drying table, that are following the coffee again into the warehouse, to the mill, to the dry mill.
I have a second question. Is like, for example, now getting a trend to pay a premium to labels like traceability, fair trade, or let's talk coffee, something like that, which is trying to promote the transparency of coffee buying. But do you think that paying such a premium, which pays well to this exporter, does it really help to improve the income of small like cherry pickers?
I think that's a really good question. We are mainly buying the coffee directly from the producer, and we use the exporter as a service provider. If we are buying coffee from directly from an exporter, we expect them to be transparent of what is going back to the producer. And actually, as a company, we are giving out that information to our clients. So when a client buys a coffee from us, we will showcase what we pay to the producer, what we pay to the exporter, what the freight was, because we're selling coffee spot in Europe, what's the freight cost, and what is our margin as a company. So I really don't believe stickers that much, but I just believe that the flow of information or the access to the information is the important thing, because you can put the sticker on the coffee, and in my opinion it doesn't really mean anything, because it's so hard to trace back the value throughout the chain.
Thank you. 네, 그러면 이것으로 물티슈에 대한 질문은 마치고요. 저희 뒤에 여자 두 분이 더 계셔서요. 질문 있으세요?
Thank you, Morten, for the presentation. It was very good coming from a producing country. All of these topics are very important. Just want to go ahead and answer a little bit to that last question. Those coffee farmers who do hire cherry pickers and are in a system like the one Morten is explaining, to ensure that they get high quality pickers, they will pay a premium to the picker. So the money does go in the end to the worker as well. And also one question, based on your experience, Morten, have you seen with the farms that you have worked with over the last 5 or 6 years, many changes in the amount of coffee and the amount of high quality coffee that they can produce year in and year out?
Yes, I think I do. I mean, I can only speak for the farms we have been working with. But yes, I have seen, like in Central America, even last year, they had like a huge problem in terms of volumes and quality. And that goes for other countries like Africa. They had the same struggles. Kenya, not this year, but the year before, was like really low. And yes, I think so. But I mean, I can only speak for myself because. But yes, in general, I would say I've seen a change.